Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Josh Holmes, of course, is one of the fellas on the Ruthless podcast. He joins me once a month. And tonight we are going to be sitting side by side in the green room over at Special Report. Josh, looking forward to that. This is a pregame. We're tossing the ball around on the sidelines a little here. And
exactly. Working it around a little bit.
Just loosening up, doing some jumping jack stretch a little bit. I want to know whether or not, you know the dark arts. You had the guys in from the Republican Leadership Committee today, and both in the Senate and the House. I was fascinated because you actually know what you're talking about, and they know what they're talking about, and Duncan knows what he's talking about. The number of people you see on TV, what's the ratio between people who know something about how to run a campaign and those who don't?
No, I would say 5% or less, Hugh. I mean, to be honest with you, it's one of the reasons why the driving reasons behind Ruthless in the first place is that we were so tired of everybody who'd never spent a day in campaigns telling us how to do our job. And, you know, it came at a good time for us, and we got kind of graduated out of our day-to-day campaign work and had the ability to talk about it. And so, yeah, I would say there's a real small number of people who've actually done it.
Well, when your guest got into the idea of having to make buys towards the end when you've got to have hard conversations with people, my ears lit up. I said, these guys have really been there and done that. So that leads me to my next question. The market is in a very tenuous place right now. We might be in the middle of an AI boom that's not unlike the dot-com boom or the subprime mortgage crisis. Dow was down across the board today, the NASDAQ, et cetera. If that happens and the AI bubble deflates and it's a rough landing for people and maybe there's collateral damage in other stocks, does Trump and the Republicans get blamed? Though they've got nothing to do with this. This is an AI rush, but do they get blamed?
Yeah, I mean, look, by default, the incumbent party is going to take more responsibility for a struggling economy, whether or not they did anything to deserve that or not. I mean, it's not completely impossible to overcome that. We've seen that a number of times over the years where you've had a party that has been either an incumbent party or an insurgent party, but largely responsible for the economic problems befalling the country, that have been able to localize elections in some ways and keep or retain majorities. But look, it's a lot easier road to hoe if you've got an economy that's humming along by next June or July, which is typically when voters lock in terms of their perceptions of how the country is going economically.
No, I think we will have that because of the working families tax cut. I think that's going to actually drive a lot of people's sentiment up. But I'm also worried about this stock market collapse. How do you immunize if you're giving advice to someone who's running for Senate or a contested House seat right now, and they, like me, are worried about the fact that the AI numbers for like Palantir and NVIDIA and the Big Seven, they're just too big. They've run up on euphoria. How do they immunize themselves against that without talking down an American company?
Well, when you're running from a bear, Hugh, you don't need to be faster than the bear. You just got to be faster than the other guy. And a whole lot of that comes into contrasting views of who's managing the economy correctly, both in terms of your own economic well-being as a voter, but also your city, your locality, your state, your country. And thus far, from the Democratic side, you've seen absolutely nothing. In fact, everything that they've prescribed going back to Obama has been an abject disaster economically. So you've got to make the case that what it is that they have in mind would subject you to further pain and anguish, and there's an awful lot to work with there. But I also think there have been a number of accomplishments here on the Republican side in the Trump administration that are worth talking about. You know, the tough thing about the big beauty is that it basically prevented catastrophe, right? It continued your tax rates rather than giving you a meaningful difference in the taxes that you paid next year as opposed to last year, which is a difficult thing to message at some level. People always compare things, you know, recency bias and whatnot. And what Republicans did, by and large, was save this economy. But it's tough to prove a negative.
Yeah. All right. Now I have a question I did not ask Scott Jennings because I didn't want to put him on the spot, but I feel no need not to put you on the spot because the fellows put you on the spot all the time. Leader McConnell cannot be replaced. Only a Republican can win. Who's going? Are you in behind someone in that race? Do we have someone that we like in that race? I just had Scott Brown on. I've known him forever. and he's got a primary challenge with John Sununu that's neither here nor there. What's going on in Kentucky? That's your home away from home from Minnesota.
Yeah, it's funny. You know, I've been involved in every Senate race dating all the way back to 2008 in Kentucky. And I had Leader Thune and a number of people asked me this last year, like, what should we be looking at? Like, what are your thoughts on the race? And I thought, well, my first thought is I'm glad that I'm not responsible for this one because I don't have a dog in the hunt. It is a competitive race. I suspect that it is going to heat up in typical Kentucky fashion in a real meaningful way. But for the first time in a long time, Hugh, it's not my fault. Whatever happens, it's not my fault.
So you're gonna back out of that one and leave the room with your face with everyone in front.
I found, Hugh, that it's a much better line of work to do what it is that you're doing than it was that I was doing. And this is
I'm
a
in
much
the middle of the
better
New
angle.
Hampshire thing now. I'm getting shot at in New Hampshire because Scott Brown's a friend. Talk to me about your home state. Tom Weiler is a friend of mine, used to live behind me in the Beltway, submariner, commander, gets Parkinson's, has to discharge. Really smart. He has a tremble, but he's a really smart guy. Can a Republican win up there if they nominate the nut? And they might nominate the nut, the lieutenant governor.
Yeah, they might do that, but they've had a tradition of nominating nuts and still winning. Listen, I know Tom, too. He came to an event that we had with Ruthless on Lake Minnetonka a couple of years ago. He's a very, very good guy. Nothing but admiration for him. And look, I think there is a fair amount of frustration in Minnesota with Tim Walz, with what's happening in North Minneapolis, with the Somalian population, how that's sort of cascaded out throughout the entire city of Minneapolis and the larger state. The problem ultimately is Republicans have had a really hard time getting on the same page there. And then they've lost a whole bunch of those typical suburban. Remember Jim Ramstad? Congressman from that third district.
John Klein.
It was like this, Yeah, right. These are districts that used to be ruby red. And I think Ramstad held it for like 30 years or something like that, and they've voted Democrat ever since. They're going to have to make a suburban appeal here. They've got the rural change that has happened. What they have not done is made any kind of inroads in suburban Minnesota. And until they do that, I think it's going to be a really tough hand of cards. Look, I'm skeptical. I was a part of the last real statewide winning ticket in 2002. It was my first campaign that I ever did when Tim Pawlenty and Norm Coleman won those races. And we couldn't have been more excited about the future of Republican politics in Minnesota. And ever since then, it's been a disaster.
You must have been 10. We did a Hugh Hewitt on Ice event, doing ice fishing with Tim Pawlenty on Lake Minnetonka for that election. That was a fine cycle. I don't think with the likes of which we have not seen since. No. Next time we'll talk about Ossoff in Georgia, because I have no idea what to do there. And that's another one where you keep your head down and try and get out of the saloon without being shot. I'll see you on Special Report later tonight, Josh Holmes. Go and sign up to like and subscribe the Ruthless podcast, and then you'll be smart about the actual mechanics of campaigning, because that's what they do on the Ruthless podcast. Stay tuned. I'm Hugh Hewitt.